Hey everyone, this is Brad from HYTE. Today we're going to be doing a quick unboxing and installation tutorial for the Y60 LCD DIY kit. This will allow you to install a LCD screen like this into the corner panel of your Y60 case. As the name does imply, this is a product intended for DIY users, so you will have to have a little bit of know-how in terms of things like running cables, taping things down, but otherwise we still think this is a pretty easy product to install. So in the box, you will find on top an instruction manual. This will cover basically all of the input and outputs and connections that you're going to need to know, sort of like which way things plug in. So make sure to keep this and refer to it as you're doing your installation. Under that, we have the LCD screen itself, which will be in this anti-static bag. And then underneath, we will have the control board here. There's also a little remote board. This is like the buttons to control the screen. You don't actually need this. This is optional. We're not going to be using it in this video, but if you do want to do things like control brightness and contrast and make those kinds of adjustments, you can plug this in. But the screen will turn on and off automatically once it receives power from the desktop, so you don't actually need this. The other next thing we'll have is the embedded DisplayPort cable or ribbon cable, and then also the cables to connect and power the device. That will be two cables here. One is a Molex to barrel plug cable, so this will provide power to the controller and the screen. And then we also have a HDMI to mini HDMI cable, and that will provide the video signal to the screen. As far as like worrying about stuff that's fragile or easy to break, the only thing you really have to worry about is this ribbon cable. Again, this is the embedded DisplayPort ribbon cable. Once it's plugged in, you want to just be very careful not to pull on it because you could break the connections to the board or the LCD itself. But otherwise it is fairly flexible and you can bend it. I wouldn't crease it super hard. It's bent pretty, it can make some pretty tight bends here, but don't fold it on itself because you could break some of the connections inside. Open up the LCD itself. Okay, so the LCD does have a plastic film that you will peel off that protects it during transport, so make sure you peel that off, otherwise you're going to get a little loss of clarity and it looks like there's like scuff marks and stuff on it, but that's just the plastic film on the top of it. So anyways, here's all the parts to the screen. Again, if you consult the instruction manual, you will see how everything plugs in. I'll do that for you really quick so that you can see how it looks out on the table. We also do recommend testing the product sort of laying on the table like this before you install it into the PC, just because you don't want to find out something's loose or disconnected or doesn't work after you've already done all the work to install it in the system. So like I said, there is a cable for power. The Molex end will plug, of course, into your power supply. The barrel plug will plug into the control board. And then same thing for HDMI. The big half of the HDMI cable will plug into your graphics card or other video source. Maybe you're using a Raspberry Pi or something to control the screen. And then the mini HDMI will plug into either one of the two HDMI ports on the control board. The only thing as far as orientation of like which way a cable goes that you have to really think about is for the DisplayPort cable. You'll notice one side has a blue tab on it. For the end that plugs into the control board, you want to make sure that blue tab faces up. As far as this connector goes, there is a little plastic tab which you will have to flip up in order to allow the cable to plug in. And then you will insert the ribbon cable into the little space that's created and then push that plastic tab back down, and it should look like that once you have it all plugged in. And then on the other end, plugging into the screen, again, you'll have this connector here on the end of the cable, and you'll see on the back of the screen there's a spot to plug it in there. And that one you just simply push into place. So if you're wondering sort of like how everything should be oriented when it's plugged in, it's going to look like this. So you're going to see the back of the screen and the sort of bit of the control board that has all the components on it are facing the same way. And then like I said, you're gonna wanna test this outside of the PC. So really quick, I'm gonna plug it into this PC here just to make sure that this board works fine. So first I'm gonna plug in the power. You can plug in this HDMI to either of the two ports. It doesn't really matter, the system will auto detect. And here you can see we have our content showing up. So that means the screen works, it's fine, so we can get to installing it into the system. So there are a handful of different ways that you can install this into the PC as far as where you're going to place the control board. You have about a foot of ribbon cable to work with. And that allows you to position this in different places in the system. There's two main spots that we've seen that most folks will put this in. One of them is up on the back of the screen, kind of piggybacking on the back of it. If you do want to install the control board onto the back of the screen like this, we actually do provide a STL file so that you can 3D print a little enclosure like this that'll help out. What this does is it allows you to take the control board and install it into this plastic shell, like so. It has a spot for the DisplayPort cable to come out, and then it exposes the input ports for the control board, and then this will attach onto the back of the LCD like this. You can hold it in place with a couple of pieces of double-sided tape, and then the holes up here match up with the holes for the top mounting points of the corner glass in the system. And like I said, that'll just kind of keep this in place like this. And can show you on this system how we have the cables routed up through the top of the control box, up kind of through the top of the system where the radiator goes, and they kind of snake around into the cable management area. And then we have the Molex connector plugged directly into the power supply, and the HDMI cable is snaked out through the gap here next to the PCIe slots and plugged directly into the graphics card. That kind of keeps things all neat and tidy, and then sort of in the final product you don't really see any of those cables. It's probably the easiest way that I can say that, you know, we would do this. If you don't like the look of this sort of like backpack thing on the screen, you know, you will from certain angles you will be able to see this piece sticking out. What we've seen other people do is actually hide this board under the floor of the case by running the DisplayPort cable up through the grates in the bottom of the case. The only thing is, if you're going to do that, we do recommend that you wrap this circuit board in something non-conductive just so that it doesn't come into contact with any of the metal of the case. If you have, you know, some kind of non-conductive tape, you can just sort of tape off the back and front of it. We recommend something like masking tape or gaffer's tape, not electrical tape, just because the adhesive in electrical tape is kind of gooey and leaves residue, whereas gaffer tape will not. They also have specific electronics cloth tape that you can get for that purpose, but most people don't have that laying around. But gaff tape, masking tape, some people might have that. Like I said, we're going to be using this 3D printed mount. Install the control board into it like this. There's 4 corner screws. Those will fit by default M2.5 thread screws. So those are the same screws that come with your M.2 SSDs. Those would be something you'd have to pick up separate if they didn't come with your motherboard, but that's what the hole sizes are meant for. First thing we're gonna do is remove the corner glass from our Y60, just a few screws here on the rear panel, and then a set of screws on the bottom of the glass and up in the top of the glass. Okay, so we've gotten our corner glass out of the Y60. You're gonna wanna make sure that this is clean and free of fingerprints on the inside, right? Because you're gonna be putting a screen up against here and you're not gonna be able to clean it. I'm just gonna use my sleeve. You should use a microfiber cloth or something to get it nice and clean. And we've got our screen here with the sort of backpack thing that we 3D printed. I put a couple of pieces of tape to keep the DisplayPort ribbon cable from flapping around. It looks a little bit janky like this, but when it's actually in the system, you can't really see this. If you want it to look really, really nice, what we've seen some people do is actually completely cover the back of this in black tape to kind of cover up all of that. But yeah, like I said, the control box is in there. That lines up with the screen, and you'll notice these 2 holes here on top line up with the 2 holes at the top of the LCD bracket. Also make sure that you don't get fingerprints on the screen itself. Again, don't use your sleeve, use a microfiber cloth. So we're going to go ahead and just place the LCD panel on the screen here. And one thing that we recommend doing, if you look at where these holes line up in the bracket, is actually to pre-stage the 2 screws that go into there. So those are going to be the same screws that you took out in the first place when you took the corner glass out. So like I said, just stage those 2 screws so that they are just barely going through the metal. That'll help a lot when you're putting it back into the case. Another piece that we've added just to kind of make things easier, we do have like just a plastic foot that we kind of put here on the bottom of the screen. You don't need to use this. You can just put like a piece of tape or something to keep it, but this just kind of keeps the bottom of the screen from moving around too much. And then we just are going to take a little piece of tape to keep it from moving around. So that'll keep that in place. And then we can take our whole assembly and put it back into the corner of the case. Okay, now that we've gotten our screen installed onto the corner panel, it's time to run all the wiring. So I've already plugged the power cable and HDMI in behind the scenes, and I've got those 2 cables here, and just sort of feed them up through the top of the case. You can either use the hole above the side radiator. If you have a large radiator and you want to go around that, you can actually squeeze some cables through here, but I like to go this way, around, and then plug down into the back of the screen here. And before we get into tidying up all the wires and everything, this is another good time to stop and make sure that the screen is all working now that you've put everything together. So I'll fire up the machine. All right, cool, looks like our screen is working. I'm gonna go ahead and tidy up some of this cable management, put the system back together, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, cool, we've gotten our screen installed, all the cables managed, everything looks good. You'll notice that on the screen right now is just the Windows desktop background, and that's kind of intentional, right? This screen is functionally another monitor for your computer. So as far as what kind of content you want to put on it, you know, that's kind of up for you to decide, right? If you want to use something like Wallpaper Engine to do video backgrounds, if you want to use something like Rain Meter to do widgets to show system specs and temperatures and things like that, or combine them together. The sky's the limit, it's up to your creativity, whatever you want to do. Hopefully you find this guide helpful. Again, I'm Brad with HYTE. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you know, if there's something we missed in this video, feel free to leave a comment, hit us up on social media, check out our Discord or our subreddit. We should be there to help you out. Thank you.